My name is Brittany, and I often think about how different my life could have been if my mom hadn't gotten sick. She passed away when I was 6, and that's when everything changed. Our house used to be full of her laughter, and the photos of our happy family covered every wall. Dad took it really hard. For months, he barely spoke, just went to work and came back home, where I tried my best to be quiet and not bother him. I didn't really understand death back then. I kept asking when Mom would come back from heaven. Dad would just hug me tight and say nothing. Then he met Sandra at some work event. She started coming over for dinner, and I noticed Dad smiling more. I guess that's why I didn't say anything when, one by one, Mom's photos started disappearing from the walls, replaced by new ones with Sandra in them. "Brittany, Sandra, and I have something to tell you," Dad said one evening. They sat me down in our living room, and I remember playing with the hem of my dress, feeling nervous. "Sandra and I are getting married. She's going to live with us and be your new mom. You'll see, everything will be wonderful." But it wasn't wonderful. As soon as they got back from their honeymoon, Sandra started changing things. She rearranged all the furniture, repainted the walls, and set up what she called house rules. "Brittany, your room is a mess again," she'd say every morning. "A young lady should keep her space tidy. And please keep your voice down when you're playing, I have a headache." I always had to help with chores, even though I was just 6. When I complained to Dad, he'd just say, "Listen to Sandra, honey. She knows what's best for you." One day, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to make out the words. "She's just not adjusting well, John," Sandra was saying. "Maybe it would be better if she lived with your mother? She's always saying how much she misses having family around." No, Dad's voice was quiet. "I promised Sarah, I promised her before I swore I'd take care of Brittany. And there's the money she left for Brittany's college. I gave my word it would go to her education." I didn't know it then, but things were about to get even harder. A year later, Sandra got pregnant, and everything changed again. Dad was over the moon, and Sandra couldn't stop talking about how she was finally going to have her own child. Those words hurt more than any chore or rule she'd ever given me. Because that's what I was to her, someone else's child. Not her own. Never her own. When Emma was born, I was 8 years old. I remember standing in the hospital hallway with Dad, peering through the nursery window at my new baby sister. She was so tiny, wrapped in a pink blanket, and Dad couldn't stop smiling. "You're a big sister now, Brittany," he said proudly. "You'll help take care of Emma, won't you?" I nodded eagerly, not understanding what that really meant. But I found out pretty quickly when they brought Emma home. Sandra wasted no time in turning me into her personal assistant. "Brittany, bring me fresh diapers. Brittany, wash these bottles. Brittany, hold Emma while I make a phone call." The demands never stopped. By the time I was 9, I knew how to change diapers, prepare baby formula, and cook simple baby food. While other kids my age were playing outside after school, I was mashing bananas and stirring rice cereal for Emma. "But I want to go to Sarah's birthday party," I remember pleading one Saturday. "Emma needs you here," Sandra said firmly. "She's teething and fussy. Besides, someone needs to clean up the mess she made in the playroom." As Emma grew, so did my responsibilities. I had to watch her constantly, making sure she didn't fall while learning to walk or put dangerous things in her mouth. Meanwhile, Emma was showered with attention and gifts. Every tantrum was rewarded with a new toy or treat. When she turned 4, Emma realized she could get me in trouble whenever she wanted. And boy, did she use that power. One time, she deliberately spilled her juice all over her new dress, then ran crying to Sandra. "Brittany pushed me," she wailed. I spent that weekend grounded in my room. Another time, she broke her expensive musical toy and blamed me. "Brittany was playing with it when it broke," she claimed. It didn't matter that I was doing homework at the time. I lost my allowance for a month to pay for a replacement. The worst was when she cut up her own party dress with scissors, then hid the scissors in my backpack. Sandra found them during one of her room inspections. "How could you be so jealous?" Sandra yelled at me. "Do you know how much that dress cost?" But I didn't, I tried to explain. "Go to your room," Dad interrupted. "We'll discuss your punishment later." Emma stood in the doorway, smirking at me as I walked past. She'd learned early that she could get away with anything, while I'd get blamed for everything. Grandma Rose was my only escape from the madness at home. Every weekend I spent at her house felt like stepping into a different world, one where I could just be a kid. She lived in a cozy house filled with the smell of fresh-baked cookies and unconditional love. "Look at you, skin and bones," she'd say, loading my plate with pancakes. "That woman's got you running around like Cinderella." Unlike at home, at Grandma's house, I could laugh as loud as I wanted and didn't have to watch my every step. When Emma visited with me once, she quickly learned that her usual tricks wouldn't work there. "But I want ice cream before dinner," Emma had whined, stomping her feet. "Young lady," Grandma said firmly, "in this house, we eat our dinner first. And there's no rewards for tantrums." Emma never came back after that. "Grandma's house is boring," she told our parents. What she meant was that Grandma's house had rules that applied to everyone equally. Then came the day that changed everything. Emma had thrown a particularly dramatic fit about doing her homework, and Grandma happened to be visiting. "John," Grandma said to Dad, her voice stern, "that child is terribly spoiled. Sandra, you need to handle this better. You're raising a little tyrant." Sandra's face turned red. "How dare you criticize my parenting? You have no right." "I have every right when I see my granddaughters being treated so differently," Grandma shot back. "Look at what you're doing to Brittany." That night, I heard more shouting from downstairs. Sandra was crying, saying she wouldn't tolerate such disrespect. Dad, as usual, took her side. The next day, Sandra announced that we would no longer be visiting Grandma Rose. "But that's not fair," I protested. "Life isn't fair," Sandra snapped. "And if I catch you trying to contact her, you'll be grounded until college." College. That word became my lifeline during the next couple of years. I threw myself into studying, counting down the days until graduation. Mom had left money for my education. I'd overheard Dad talking about it enough times. That money was my ticket out. Then came graduation day. I was still in my cap and gown when Dad and Sandra sat me down for a serious talk. About college, Dad started, not meeting my eyes. "We've decided to save that money for Emma's education instead." The world stopped. "What?" "Your sister has such bright prospects," Sandra added smoothly. "And you, well, you're more suited for practical work." Something inside me snapped. For the first time in my life, I screamed. "That's my money. Mom left it for me." "You promised her, Dad. You're just a liar." "You ungrateful girl," Dad shouted, his face red. "After everything we've done for you. Get out. Tomorrow you can start your adult life somewhere else." I didn't wait for tomorrow. I ran upstairs, threw some clothes and essentials into my backpack, grabbed the hidden photo of Mom, and walked out. My friend Jenny had always said I could stay with her family if things got bad, and now things had gotten as bad as they could get. Life as a waitress wasn't what I'd dreamed of doing after high school, but it paid the bills, barely. I started at the Silver Spoon, a busy downtown restaurant, working double shifts whenever I could. My feet ached every night, and I smelled like French fries and burger grease, but at least I was free. Jenny's parents were amazing, letting me stay with them for those first few months. But I knew I couldn't impose forever. That's when I met Maria, another waitress at the restaurant, who was looking for a roommate. "The apartment's tiny," she warned me, "and the neighbors are loud, but it's cheap." She wasn't kidding about tiny. Our shared apartment could barely fit 2 beds and a couch. But it was ours, and neither of us had to answer to anyone else. We worked the same shifts, shared grocery bills, and somehow made it work. "Any plans for school?" Maria would ask sometimes, as we counted our tips after closing. I'd just shake my head. With rent, utilities, and food, I could barely save anything. College felt like a distant dream that had died the night I left home. Then, on a random Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. I almost dropped the coffee pot I was holding when I saw the number. "Brittany, sweetheart, I've been trying to track you down. How's college going?" My throat tightened. "I'm not in college, Grandma." "What do you mean?" Your father had Sarah's money set aside. I found myself telling her everything: the fight, getting kicked out, working as a waitress. By the end, I was crying in the restaurant's break room, and Grandma was silent for so long I thought we'd lost connection. "Those miserable, selfish," she finally said, her voice shaking with anger. "Listen to me, Brittany. I'm paying for your college. No arguments." "Grandma, no, I can't let you." "You're not letting me do anything." "I'm doing it. Your mother was like a daughter to me, and I won't let them steal your future." "Have you looked at any schools?" "I could try the local university. They have evening classes." "Perfect. We'll get you enrolled for next semester." "But Brittany?" She paused. "Let's keep this between us. I don't want to deal with your father or that woman." I laughed through my tears. "Trust me, Grandma, neither do I." So that's how I became a full-time waitress and a part-time student. My days started at 5 a.m. with studying, then classes, then straight to work until closing. I'd come home exhausted, feet blistered, smelling like restaurant food, only to crack open my books again. Maria thought I was crazy. "Girl, when do you sleep?" "Sleep is for the weak," I'd joke, downing my third cup of coffee. But for the first time since I'd left home, I felt like I was moving forward. Every test I passed, every paper I turned in, felt like a small victory. Not just for me, but for Mom too. I might not have gotten to use her money, but I was still going to get the education she'd wanted for me. And the best part? Nobody from my family knew. They probably imagined me still serving tables, going nowhere in life. Let them think that. I was done trying to prove myself to people who'd never cared anyway. I was studying for my business management final when Emma's message popped up on Facebook. There she was, grinning beside a brand new red Mercedes, wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Look what Mom and Dad got me for my birthday." Not that you'd know anything about nice cars, huh? Still serving burgers? Must be fun watching everyone else live their best life while you're stuck being a waitress forever. The next photo was of her college acceptance letter. "Got into State U. Mom and Dad are paying for everything: tuition, housing, meal plan. They even promised me a spring break trip to Europe. But hey, at least you get free fries with your shift meal, right?" I stared at my textbook, then back at her message. I could have told her about my 3.9 GPA, about how I was about to graduate with honors. Instead, I clicked block user and went back to studying. 3 weeks later, I graduated with my business degree. Only Grandma was there to watch me walk across the stage, but that was all I needed. We went out for dinner afterward, at a different restaurant, of course. Back at work, things started changing. Mr. Peterson, the owner, called me into his office one morning. "Brittany, we've noticed how hard you work. How would you feel about becoming shift manager? You know this place inside and out, the staff respects you, and you've got the education for it now." That was just the beginning. 6 months later, I was promoted to floor administrator. My salary doubled, and suddenly I could afford to move out of the tiny apartment I shared with Maria. Years passed, and I kept climbing. By 30, I was running the whole place. The Silver Spoon had transformed from a regular downtown restaurant into one of the city's top dining spots. My name was on restaurant industry magazines, but my family still thought I was just a waitress. My new apartment was in one of those fancy high-rises downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. Every morning, I'd stand there with my coffee, watching the sunrise, thinking about how far I'd come from that scared teenager who ran away with just a backpack. It was a quiet Monday morning when I got the Facebook message from Mrs. Roberts, our old neighbor. We'd kept in touch over the years. She was one of the few people from my old life who'd been kind to me. She'd often slip me cookies when Sandra was being particularly harsh, and once even helped me hide my mom's photo album when Sandra wanted to throw it away. "Brittany, honey, I thought you should know. Emma's graduating next week, and she's planning something nasty. She's made reservations at the Silver Spoon. She knows you work there. She's been bragging to everyone about how she's going to have you wait on her table. Says it'll be hilarious to have her college dropout sister serve her graduation party. She's invited all her snobby friends and even some of our old neighbors. She's been telling everyone how she's going to show them what a failure you turned out to be. I thought you should know." I sat back in my leather office chair, looking out over the restaurant floor through the one-way glass. The lunch rush was just beginning, and I watched my well-trained staff move efficiently between tables, like a perfectly choreographed dance. A slow smile spread across my face as I opened our reservation system. Sure enough, there it was, Emma Wilson, party of 15, Saturday 7 p.m., graduation celebration. She'd even added a special note requesting the best table in the house, price is no object. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could cancel it. One click, and their reservation would disappear. I could have Janet call with some excuse about a plumbing emergency or a double booking. But no, I had a better idea. I picked up my phone and called Grandma, who answered on the second ring. She was probably in her garden. She always kept her phone close while tending to her prized roses. "You'll never guess who's coming to dine at my restaurant," I said when she answered. "Who?" "Emma. And Dad and Sandra. They're coming to celebrate her graduation. Apparently, she specifically chose this place to humiliate her waitress sister. Mrs. Roberts just warned me about it." Grandma's voice turned sharp. "Cancel their reservation. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life, Brittany. Haven't they hurt you enough?" Actually, I couldn't help grinning as I looked at the framed Businesswoman of the Year award on my wall. "I have a better idea. How would you like to come to dinner that night? I'll give you the best table in the house, behind the marble column by the waterfall wall. You'll be able to see everything, but they won't see you." There was a pause, then Grandma started laughing, that deep, mischievous laugh that always meant trouble when I was growing up. "Oh, you devious girl. Count me in. Should I wear my pearls for the occasion?" "Perfect. I'll have Carlos make your favorite chocolate souffle. He's been practicing that new raspberry sauce you liked last time." "I'll bring my camera," Grandma chuckled. "This is going to be better than those reality TV shows you used to watch." After we hung up, I called in my assistant. "Janet, clear my schedule for next Saturday evening. And make sure the staff knows I'll be handling a special table personally." "Of course, Ms. Wilson." "Anything else?" "Yes," I smiled, running my finger along the spine of my business management degree diploma hanging on the wall. "Make sure we have our finest champagne chilled. And have Miguel prepare his special caviar appetizers. I have a feeling it's going to be quite a memorable night." As I looked out over my restaurant again, I couldn't help but think how perfect this was. Emma had always loved her little power plays, her attempts to humiliate me. Well, this time, she was walking right into my territory. And I was ready. Saturday evening arrived, and the restaurant was buzzing with its usual weekend energy. I watched from my office as my sister's party arrived, Emma in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, Sandra in her typical overdone makeup, and Dad looking older than I remembered. They were surrounded by Emma's friends, all dressed to impress. I could see Grandma at her hidden table, pretending to read the menu while watching everything. She gave me a subtle wink when I passed by. "Excuse me," Emma's loud voice carried across the restaurant. "I specifically requested my sister, Brittany, as our server." "Where is she?" I smoothed down my tailored suit jacket and approached their table. Emma's face lit up with malicious delight when she saw me. "Oh my God, everyone, this is my sister I was telling you about. She gestured at me like I was some exhibit at a zoo. Still a waitress after all these years. I mean, I just graduated from State U, and she's still carrying plates. The table erupted in laughter, led by Emma. Dad chuckled too, though he couldn't quite meet my eyes. Sandra just sat there with that superior smirk I remembered so well. Look at her clothes, Emma stage whispered to her friends. I guess that's what you can afford on a waitress's salary. I stood there in my Armani suit, letting them laugh. The irony wasn't lost on me. What can I get for you this evening? I asked professionally. Emma made a show of studying the menu. Well, since you asked, I'll have the lobster thermidor. Oh wait. She looked up with fake concern. Can you even afford to eat at a place like this? Do you know what lobster is? More forced laughter from her friends, though some were starting to look uncomfortable. And after dinner, Emma continued, her voice dripping with contempt, I want you to personally wash our dishes. I'll even give you a nice tip, maybe you can buy yourself some decent clothes for once. I could see Grandma gripping her table's edge so hard her knuckles were white. Some of the guests were whispering among themselves, clearly embarrassed by Emma's behavior. Sandra finally spoke up, her voice cold. Really, Brittany, you should be grateful Emma chose your establishment for her celebration. Though I must say, I'm surprised they hired someone like you at such a nice place. Actually, I said, my smile never wavering, I won't be able to take your order or wash your dishes tonight. Emma's face darkened. What do you mean, you won't? I want to speak to your manager right now. I'll have you fired. That won't be necessary, I said calmly. The manager is already here. Well, where are they? Emma demanded, looking around. You're looking at her. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Emma's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Dad's face had gone completely white, and Sandra looked like she'd swallowed something sour. That's impossible, Emma finally sputtered. You're lying. You're just a waitress. Actually, came a familiar voice, she's not just the manager. She owns 30% of this restaurant now. Grandma rose from her hidden table and walked over, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The look she gave Dad could have frozen hell over. While you were busy spoiling one daughter and crushing the other, I put Brittany through college. She worked here as a waitress during the day and studied business management at night. Every single success she has, she earned herself. Emma jumped up, her face red. That's not fair. You're lying. She's nothing but a successful businesswoman who owns part of one of the city's most prestigious restaurants? Grandma cut in. Who bought her own luxury apartment while you're still living off Daddy's money? Is that what you were going to say? Dad finally found his voice. Mom, Don't you dare, Mom me, John Wilson, Grandma snapped. You let that woman turn you against your own daughter. You gave away Brittany's college money her mother left specifically for her. Well, guess what? I'm making things right. I've already changed my will. Everything I own goes to Brittany. Every penny. Sandra shot up from her chair. You can't do that. Emma is your granddaughter too. Emma has had everything handed to her on a silver platter her entire life, Grandma replied coldly. She doesn't need my money, though from what I've seen tonight, she could use some basic human decency. Emma completely lost it. She grabbed her wine glass and hurled it across the table, shattering plates and sending food flying. This isn't fair. You're all just jealous of me. Security, I called calmly. 2 men in black suits appeared instantly. Please escort these people out. You can't throw us out, Sandra screamed. Do you know who we are? Yes, I do, I replied. You're trespassers causing a disturbance in my restaurant. Leave now, or I'll call the police and press charges for the damage to my property. Emma tried to grab another plate, but one of the security guards caught her arm. Dad just stood there, looking lost, as they were all led to the door. Brittany, he called back weakly. Please, can we talk? I turned my back and walked away. Over the next few months, he tried everything: calls, emails, even showing up at the restaurant once. I had security turn him away. That was 5 years ago. The Silver Spoon is now the top-rated restaurant in the city, and I've opened 2 more locations. Grandma kept her word about the will, though thankfully she's still going strong at 75, tending her garden and coming to the restaurant every Sunday for her chocolate soufflé. Last week, I got another message from Emma. Something about how she's changed and wants to make amends. I did what I always do with messages from that part of my life, hit delete and went back to work. Some chapters are better left closed.